You're listening to the Novice Experience, a podcast that explores the opportunities and challenges commonly encountered by students and young people. I'm Calvin Chan, and chatting with my guests, I'm going to take a deep dive into their meaningful stories, the lessons they've learned, and how they can inspire others. Let's get going. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Novice Experience. I'm your host, Calvin Chan. This is part 2 of our episode with Jon Leung. Jon's been in the Air Cadet program for over 20 years, and for 13 years of that, he's been a leader. He's been an officer in the cadet instructor cadre of the Canadian Forces, and he's here in part 2 to talk about how to become a leader. For a lot of young people nowadays, there are a lot of leadership opportunities available to them. Yeah, mostly at school, and sports teams, extracurricular activities. It's becoming more frequent that they need that emotional intelligence and those interpersonal / enterprise skills to lead others, whether it's a small group or a big group. So I wanted to ask you, Jon, what was the experience like when you were going through the cadet program? Last week you talked about how your mom inspired you to take initiative, really, take advantage of your time spent in the program. And if you're bored, don't be bored. Find something cool and fun to do so that it's rewarding and a rewarding experience for you. But going from that experience, when was that switch where you had to lead somebody? Do you remember that first experience and what was it like?
There's probably experiences that happened before this, but the only thing that I can remember, as old as I am now, is I found my first mentee, and it was a really good guy. His name is Maximilian Choi. The reason why I gravitated to him wasn't because of his personality or anything like that. It was literally because his name was Maximilian. And I'm like, wow, that is a really cool name. And that early mentorship relationship, where I would attribute it to kind of how I build my mentorship relationships moving on in the future, was more of like the I don't actually know the term, but it's like when you're in martial arts and you have you're just the older kid to the younger kid, where you're like brothers and you're bringing them up, showing them a little bit, but you're growing together. Mm-hmm. And trying to make this kid's life a little bit less boring every single time they're in the classroom, at least when I teach, or try to teach other teachers how to make their classes less boring for this kid, as well as trying to give them other opportunities and environments to become a more successful cadet and person and be able to tackle their day-to-day a little bit better. That experience was what I remember my first actual true leadership, conscious efforts at leadership was into that first kid.
What qualifies someone to be a leader? Because like I said, people are put in these positions much more early on, at a younger age. And I mean, even if they're not assigned into that position, I truly believe that someone can show signs of leadership and really lead others on a micro level, even when they're young. So in your opinion, and I guess this would beg the question, what does leadership really mean? But what qualifies someone to be a leader?
So I'm really conflicted with that question, because leadership means two different things. If it's leadership in cadets, the way that cadets understand it, and it's that micro leadership.
Yeah.
Honestly, you're looking for someone who wants to genuinely make things better. So that's just the attitude. And I think it translates to what the actual definition or qualities of a leader that I have in mind, but genuinely wanting to make things better, whether it be for that microcosm of an event, like you're just doing one task and you want to make it better than everyone else, you care the most about it, you're the leader. Mm-hmm. That's really what it comes down to. You care the most about what you're doing. And if you care the most, right, and you're equipped with the right tools, you could easily be the leader.
What about in the professional world? because you have corporate leaders, you have political leaders.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of different leaders outside of the cadet program and outside of a typical high school environment. Um, do you always need to have good intentions in mind to be a good leader?
No, I would say you don't have to have good intentions in mind, but it just depends on the task. So that's where I'm conflicted on the definition. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the goal, right? Whoever wants it most will be the leader.
Right.
So whether they achieve it through like um, ethical, moral means or less ethical, less moral means, the
Mm-hmm.
person who wants it most within that group that you're all working together, that team, will most likely be the leader.
In part one of the episode, you talked about how when you were younger, you were always a really good number two because you were the person who was rallying, but you weren't really the figurehead that was leading the team, but you were the sort of in an advisory role, right? You always gave good ideas. You were the planner. Um, why did you think you were never the leader? Why did you feel like you were more fit for number two but not for number one?
I think it just came with the course because I never originated the ideas. I think that's the biggest thing. Like I was never very creative, but I had a very good skill set in putting things together. The way that I used to describe myself in the cadet program, even still, is I'm a builder. Like
Mhm.
I'm not the architect. Like I'm not the one who draws out the plans, right? But I'm
Mhm.
really, really good at building. So if you give me an objective, like I can strategize and I can try to make things work to get them there. And that's why I work better as a number two. If someone has a direction, like I'll get you there. Just tell me like what you need done. Especially if
Yeah.
I care about it, it's even better. So especially in the cadet program,
Mhm.
where like regardless of how charismatic you are, it's a lot easier to shine as a like in the position of number two because once the person has the poster child of the idea happens and you put the resources together and you rally and you corral, like the win is everybody's, right? But if I do my job properly, I can get everyone to shine in that experience.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, the group gets the nod, but everyone who put the project together gives me the nod.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way I like to lead when I was a kid.
And that's really interesting because when you mentioned picking a mentee, I was going to ask, like, don't you have to be really good at reading people to be an effective leader? And sometimes I think about a sports team. If you're a general manager of a team, basketball, hockey, whatever, and you're building your team of athletes, right? Let's say basketball. There's point guard, there's shooting guard, there's someone who drives the play, he's the playmaker, someone's the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
There's different personalities. As an effective leader, and obviously you want to be the championship team. How do you determine who best to mentor and put on your team?
That's a really, really good question. I think it really depends on, once again, taking the caveat that it depends on the task,
For
obviously.
sure. Yeah.
Um, I think, actually, I have this, taking this a little bit out of context, I have this conversation with my personal group of friends. I have a group of guys that I play games with, like anything from competitive FPS shooters to MOBA games, just a whole bunch of games together.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting how a lot of people slide into different roles, whether it suits them in the game, but it actually resembles them in person. And no matter
Mm.
what the game is, taking that into example, taking let's say an FPS, I'm never an entry fragger. I'm never the first person through the door. I really am not technically skilled enough to do any of that. But typically I'm the playmaker in my role. So knowing
Hmm.
who's good at what strengths, where to play, where to hold, when to push, just knowing the most about the environment is my responsibility.
Hmm.
So taking that approach to leadership and how to piece a team together and how to play to people's strengths. I don't think all leaders need that to happen. Like, you don't need to be the playmaker to be the leader. Like, a lot of sports teams, like, sometimes they always just put the best player as the team captain, right? And they lead through example, and maybe that's all it needs, right? But when I say that they could put a little bit more effort into leadership, that's where I think that care, that effort, that's not to achieve the goal, but you want to achieve the goal in a very specific way. Like, I want to achieve the goal and I want everyone to leave after like loving their life. That is a different approach to leadership than going like, we're just going to hit the goal.
For sure.
Right. So you need different types of leaders in different speeds and different skill sets to do so. So when you're piecing your team together, let's say me as a playmaker, right? The number one thing that you need, that I look for in a team for myself, is attitude. Like, it's just like, are they doing this for like the goal and the team, or are they doing it for themselves? And for me, I really don't work well when people work for themselves. It's something that's really, I'm very attuned to look for, because it comes out in their work. And I don't like dealing with that in my workspace. So I don't deal with selfish players. I only deal with people who want to win as a team.
But it's okay to have personal interest, though.
Oh, 100%. As long as they work for my interest.
You don't put it on top of the team's interests.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I remember back then, and I still remember, John, you always said you were the catalyst for all things good.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, you really explained it well there, right? Just working towards that good thing, whatever it can be, right? Like, it's pretty subjective what good really means, but catalyst, because you're the person that gives it a boost, and you're the playmaker within a team. And I also remember when you were my team leader, I felt like your style was really unique because you were always trying to create an unforgettable experience for all of us. You were able to turn a really ordinary situation into something that was exciting and worth doing for us. And sometimes, you had tokens or something tangible for us to keep, and it was like a memento, or it was like you made an ordinary survival camping trip into like a challenge, outdoor challenge. And you were really good with creating that experience for your team. When did you learn how to do that? And when did you learn it was an effective method for you?
That's a really good question. I think I learned it in the classroom, and I think I've always tried to do it, but there was a time and a day where I like consciously knew that's something that I needed to put effort into, and it was worthwhile. And it goes back to in episode 1 where I described an officer that paid attention to me. He taught a class which was the control surfaces on an aircraft, and I don't like aviation. I literally don't care about it. I was taught in level 4, and the way he taught it was so mind-breakingly cool in my mind that it made me hungry to always do that, no matter what the experience. And for the geeks out there who know this lesson, control surfaces are like ailerons, elevators, the rudder of an aircraft. And the way he taught this lesson is he arranged the desks into the shape of a plane and had students sit as the control features, played a video of them flying through Star Fox, and just said like, okay, the plane is rolling to the right, roll to the right. And then we just like try to like in the classroom, like look at the screen and try to do it.
Right.
And then if we pass, he'll continue the video. And the goal was to get to the end of the video. And my mind was just blown because none of us knew, like he didn't teach any material. He just sat us in that room, right? And just put images on there. Like if you want to roll, you do all this type of stuff. We're going to play a game. And that was 30 minutes. And I'm like, wow, this lesson just blew my mind.
And like 9 out of 10 instructors would be just doing whiteboard and a marker and just like listing what the control surfaces are.
Right. And it's one of those other experiences that like shook me to my core, where my mom gave me the advice. And like, I used to teach what with whiteboard, and I taught really well, just to give myself a like pat on the back. I didn't teach poorly, but after that I taught like, I recognize, I'm like, what I thought was good was absolute garbage. And I'm like, what was I doing for the beginning of my life? I wanted
Mhm.
to make cadets' lives better, and this is what better was. I
Yeah.
was just a regular pleb in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those moments where um, it made me want to put that effort in, because I just saw like fundamentally the change in myself, where I really didn't like cadets,
Mhm.
and then suddenly I had a purpose. Like I knew that I could make this less crappy, even in the like the worst lesson that I didn't want to sit through, and
Yeah.
I actually enjoyed it. So
And I'm sure like these are all applicable in the workplace as well. When you're
yes,
working in a team, you can make things exciting. People love an experience, right?
yeah,
Instead of just
that's the
sitting
real thing.
that like, in general, like people love an experience, but I feel like also some people aren't inclined to have that style of motivation because they feel like they lack that creativity. Do you think
Yep.
that's true, or is it mostly just like being too lazy or you're not thinking deep enough?
I think it's a little bit of both, but so lack of creativity is definitely a reason. I
Mhm.
am, and I'll say this again, I am not creative. And I've described why before. Like, I've never the one to come up with the ideas.
Yeah.
But, and this is this is where I feel like kids have less excuses now. The age of information and online education is so much that it's your own fault for not having creativity. Because
Mhm.
creativity nowadays is different. True creativity, where you come up with a genuinely new thing. Nobody cares if you came up with a new thing, because if I didn't know, if I've never experienced it before, you're the creative one now,
Mhm.
right? You stole it. You taught me. I don't know any better. You're fantastic. Good job. Like I'm amazed, and I'm sure for that officer, he didn't originate that lesson either.
Right.
So the way I look at it is that I just have enough experience. I just have enough education. And that's where like I really believe in school. I really believe in university. Some people don't need it because they're naturally talented and creative. I am not that, and a lot of people aren't. So just run through the train of being like uneducated and like going through experiences where you just get trial by error rammed into your brain, that you become creative.
Mhm.
Like that's really what it is. It's not a barrier anymore. You just haven't watched enough YouTube. Like it's like you just
Yeah.
haven't read enough articles.
Right.
Like if you wanted to teach it better, and I say this all the time for first time instructors at all. If you read your lesson plan and you're like, damn, this is going to be good, which never happens, by the way. It doesn't happen anymore. People don't read their lesson plans, for one. And number two, they don't go like, wow, this is really cool. They just like know it's boring, but they're like, this is what a lesson plan is. And then they'll just perform a bad lesson.
It becomes the norm.
Yeah. So I think you can take that philosophy and apply it to life, but it's just like, just do more, read more, look at more, and you'll be better at it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I feel like when you feel like your back's against the wall, there's always a different possibility to execute something.
Right.
And that goes back to you saying that you're a playmaker. Because I'm thinking like if you're a basketball player and you're a playmaking point guard and the other team's defense is in the way, there's a whole bunch of different plays that you can do. If the direct pass doesn't work, do the bounce pass, do the no look pass. There's an alley oop option. Like the really good playmakers always come up with a way to break the other team's defense.
Right.
And not that in all situations there's a defense,
Right.
but in a sense where there's a competitor here, there's always a different way of doing things, and you just have to reimagine your possibilities of
Right.
doing things. Yeah.
It's one, especially that basketball analogy. Like you could be the
Mhm.
Michael Jordan and be the one to dunk, the one to like sink the rock down, or you could be the Steve Nash who just does like ridiculous. Like, how did you make that? Like that
Yeah.
pass does not exist.
Mhm.
Like, which one do you enjoy more? And then you'll probably figure out what type of leader you are, because that's what
Sure.
you idolize.
For sure.
right?
Yeah, and it's not easy to do, because I feel
No.
like we all go through life in society, in school. We grow up being told what to do, right? We
Yep.
we we grow up being told. Remember that like first that really cliched game that we used to play as a baby. You have to put this shape into that
Right.
hole. Like we grew up learning how to do things in a specific particular way, and it was only like a one solution thing. Even through
Right.
school, our math tests, there was only one way to solve this problem. But once we get into like engineering or in science, you start doing experiments or design for different structures, right?
Right.
There's no right answer. There's always a better way of doing it, as long as you're willing to learn and improve and have an open mind, right? So
Right.
that really applies to being a good leader as well. You're always learning. Just don't be you don't have that tunnel vision, basically.
Right. And like the number one fundamental cadet lesson, which is adapt and overcome. Like you need to have that mentality to be a leader. You need to
Mhm.
adapt and overcome. You're gonna face challenges. Your plan will never go right. Like you don't be butthurt about it. Just move forward. It's a necessary attitude.
And that's the essence of being a project manager, which I
Yeah.
mean you're really familiar with, right? Because when you're managing a project in the corporate world, um, things never go as planned.
Yeah.
And that's why the really, really good project managers know how to have a contingency plan in place to adapt and overcome those risks, and maybe even capitalize on some opportunities along the way.
Right.
So yeah, like that's why I love leadership. Like it's not even just like a position that you put in, but it's just you as a person and how you see different situations in life. That really helps.
Yep. I agree.
Now I know that you're an officer now for like 13 years. Obviously, when you're an adult officer, it's more of like a corporate way of thinking. There's particular baselines you have to worry about. There's administrative sides you have to worry about. Um, did you ever feel like it was hard to measure your success as a leader after being an adult officer? Because I guess back then you would have thought that a mentor mentee relationship was really really good when you saw the other person succeed and reach their goals. But perhaps as an adult officer, there are particular expectations on the administrative side um, that don't really relate to that mentorship relationship, because it's not quantifiable really.
Yeah. So if I take your question, you're asking what is my measurement of success as an officer versus when I was a kid, uh, a cadet?
Yeah, and is it worse off? Because I in my opinion, I feel like being like corporate measurements of success is really like rigid,
Yeah.
and it has to be quantifiable. But definitely like being a leader and being a mentor is very subjective and definitely not quantifiable.
So in terms of leadership, I agree it's not quantifiable, and my opinion has changed since I was a younger officer till now. The core of it is the same,
Hmm.
but the approach is different. As a younger officer who has a lot more time, effort, and blood, sweat, and tears to put into the program, to be quite honest, um, the measurement of success has not changed, and it is in terms of cadets and even in business. Is I want to build something that other people are jealous of, that they want to be in my thing, like that is has always even as a cadet has always been my thing. Like,
Hmm.
oh, you have a from the simple thing like, oh, we have two leaders here, they're both running the same event, you get to choose who you go under. I want all the people. I don't want anyone to go to you. I want to be so attractive in being such a cool leader who does everything like much better that you won't even question coming over here. You won't even look at the team sizes. You're just going to come over here. And it's the same thing that I approached with the squadron. Like, especially back, I like your year and a few years after yours as well, where I took a front row seat in that experience, where I would say like I was actively driving that bus myself with the squad of officers that I had.
Hmm.
Um, we wanted to build an environment that every other cadet from every other unit, one, knew who we are, number two, wanted to be in there or number 3 were jealous. Like those are the 3 things that we were trying to achieve. And it is like not really quantifiable, right? It's very qualitative data. But the thing is, it's just like when you build that cult, for example, when you build that experience of cadets who are really into it, love the experience, and you're doing good, it's like that Apple mentality. You're not looking at anybody else to benchmark off.
Oh
You're the
yeah.
benchmark. You're the one being progressive. And that's how I approach 655. I'm like, I don't look at any other unit for inspiration. I look at them for like what they're doing to see what I want to do different. But I don't go to them for ideas too much. I feel like we should be the one being progressive.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it be meant like we were one of the rare units, especially back in the day, to spend a lot of effort on multiple levels of cadets. Like from level 1, like you've seen it for like your group pretty much. Like level 1 to like level 7, like there was a lot of pride, a lot of effort, and a lot of attention to each of those levels. Every officer had a level, everyone put that effort in, and you could see that paid off so much in dividends. Like the kids are strong, the environment is strong, you can run it by yourself. Like I really loved the program back in the day when I was driving the bus and I had the energy to do that and all that type of stuff. It was a really good time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, I know that obviously you had a lot of good work done as a leader and a lot of good positive experiences. But looking back, like, are there any things that you wish you did differently as a leader, or I guess like to sound less negative, that you wish you could have tried that you didn't get a chance to?
Um, in terms of cadets, there are only a few things that I would try to run differently, with the understanding that my knowledge and my assets were different back in the day. I
Mm-hmm.
really wish I was more collaborative with more officers. Like, uh, like I just described with passion, my attitude in what I measured success in. That was actually one of the weaknesses in my leadership style, because I was just so bloody competitive that it bled to other officers as well. So a lot of people didn't want to talk to me, like because I was very nerdy about it, like very aggressive, very nerdy about it, and I don't blame them. I'm not a pleasant person to talk to in that frame of mind. So I do wish I was more collaborative, because it would have been better for our kids to not just be a silo. Instead of looking at our program singular, like 655, I should have looked at improving the program in general. Like that's what it should have been. Like
Right.
make the cadet experience more holistic and improve it. So that is one thing that I really wish I improved on.
Would you say that was an example of self-interest or not really?
I would say, yeah, it
Mm.
was definitely a selfish thing, because, and this is actually pretty easy to describe because I do recognize this. Um, I was told for so long that my brand of leadership was wrong by a lot of officers, by a lot of seniors. They really didn't like the way I did things. So every single day, moment, second that I spent with my cadets or my kids was a minute, second spent proving them wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's honestly how I felt about it. And you've been on my drill team, and I always say like this is going to be my last year. Like it's going to be my last year. And it's one of those things I need to prove. Like I need that closure of like this was worth it, and now like I have something to show for it. And in episode 1, when you asked me in the Spitfire, like what's my like what moment do I want to play again? That moment where we won provincials was when I was like, yes. After like 6 years of trying, it's like
Yeah.
yes. Like the not just because we won the landscape of drill or that one competition, every other team after that fact started to do what we did. And I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, I'm so happy. Like I'm so happy that like basically my answer won. And I think that was like how competitive I was back in the day. And I needed it. Like there was a lot of hardship on the other side that wasn't cadets.
Right.
So once again, cadets is a good environment for me to feel like I had something to contribute. I was doing good. I was part of a community and I could have a personal win. And one of the things I'm really thankful for, like especially for your year and the years of cadets that came before and after you, is just that you guys you guys are my evidence. Like I think that's the easiest way. It's just like I used to say this all the time. I'm like, if you really feel like I'm doing something wrong, choose one of your kids and pick any of mine. And we'll see which one is better. Like we'll just like give them a task. Well, let's do it. Just choose any of mine. Choose yours and then choose mine and we'll find. And it was one of those attitudes that I was really like determined that I wanted to prove that self-validation that like I had a good idea of what leadership was and I wanted to get my kids there. And yes, that was self-centered, but I think because the idea like the win is self-centered, but the result like the after like the what do you call it? Not the main effect, but the side effect.
The byproduct?
Yeah, the byproduct is what it should have been the main product. There's like all these all these kids that I'm really proud of.
Right. And I mean, we're all really thankful because like from our point of view, like we really benefited from a really good crop of officers too. You know, for me personally, like we absorbed from many different like leadership styles, and obviously we learned mentality and emotional intelligence and relationships and interpersonal skills, and each one of you had a different style to deal with those aspects. So obviously you were speaking from your point of view, but we really benefited from having that competition between you guys, I guess, right? That internal competition. But I guess like what's the like the ultimate compliment was that I remember a few years later, I think someone, because we post our routines on all over YouTube, and I think another province actually
the Alberta champions,
they used our routine, and that was the ultimate compliment for us, I think, because we like recreated that from scratch.
It was funny because I'm like, hey, you know this movement, just count it out. You can count it out. I guarantee it. It's our full routine.
That was amazing. All right. Unfortunately, like we're near the tail end of our episode, but I wanted to end off with more of a general question, Jon. You know, young people, they might not have much experience or confidence or even the maturity, but what they often don't lack is that passion and drive to make change. How can they rise to become leaders in every aspect of our society and in their different positions and what they're doing? How can they rise to the occasion and be the leaders that they really are internally?
I think the operative state or word that in your sentence is rise, because I think a lot of kids are pressured, and actually not just kids, everyone is pressured to be that shining star in every interaction that they have. But realistically, leadership opportunities don't come, they're not a commodity, right? They don't show up often, and you don't win at every situation. It's you're not meant to. That's not what humans are. We're built different for different reasons. So if you are not shining in the environment that you are right now and you really want to try to figure out where you can win as a leader, like I said, the leader is typically the one who cares the most about it. And if you don't find a lot of opportunities to be a leader, it just means you don't care about that environment. So the best thing that you can do is find an environment that you can lead. Like it can be something as simple as you are lucky and school is your thing, right? You go on student council, you enjoy building, you're invested in that community.
Oh, you're a nerd and you love the lab.
Yeah, but you're like not just like that. To be a leader of that nerd lab, you have to have pride in community. And the thing is, humans are communal animals, right? Like whether you be introvert or extrovert, people like want to invest time into people and things that they share a common interest in, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just need to find that common interest that speaks to you, and then you can lead it. Reddit is a really, really, really good example of that. Normal people, random people with regular day jobs or regular no job, right? Are leaders in their communities because they just have a lot more to say. They're communicating, they're moderating, they're sorting the knowledge articles, they're adding to that content. It's what they want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
it builds off that initiative. They rose to that occasion because they saw that opportunity. And that's what the difference is. If you don't see an opportunity to lead, you just haven't seen enough. So if you're in an environment where you don't have access to these communities, you don't know what you're doing, you can probably win in your own community. You just need to step up as many times as possible. Get knocked down, it's not your thing, right? They don't choose you and all that type of stuff. But sometimes you can even say that it's not even for another person to give you that chance. You just do it yourself, right? If you want to do something, you're already a leader. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, the difference is, and I'm sure if you work your first job, I'm sure if you work your second job, there are people in the office that only want to be there 9 to 5, punch in, punch out.
Yeah.
The person who cares more about that office will obviously be the leader because the rest of them don't care. Right? It's something that I teach one of the most influential cadet experiences of my life is teaching the drill and ceremonial instructor course, the DCIC course.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I try, like my fundamental lesson that I'm really proud of that I came in from that entire thing is that like it starts with a statement that says, I don't care. I don't care about you. I don't care about any of you. And I don't care about this program. However, if any of you feel different, you can take my spot. And then when someone steps up, I'm like, now you're the leader. And that's the difference. If I punch you in the face multiple times, but then you try to fight back, the moment you start fighting back, you're the leader. Right?
Right.
And that's kind of goes, once again, it boils back down to my mom's Confucius like statement. Like, if you're bored, don't be bored. The way I took it is like, you've been hit in the face multiple times. When
Yeah.
are you going to learn to defend yourself? Is someone going to defend you? The answer is no. No one else is there. It's just you and him. It's
Yeah.
life and yourself. Ask for help. Do something. Like, don't just take it. And yeah, step up. Rise to the occasion. Just stop trying to get punched in the face.
I love it. Yeah. Really take charge of your life. And yeah, Jon, thank you so much for taking the time. I never really had a lot of different mentors, and I never really liked to have like an official mentor in my life as well, because I believe that all like leadership and learning and everything, they're all fluid, right? Like you can learn from different people at the same time, but you've been one of the most influential leaders in my life throughout my time in Air Cadets, and obviously like I'm still building off of our experiences together in Air Cadets and in my life and my career now. So yeah, we'll never forget the good things we did back at
I
our
appreciate
squadron.
that. I genuinely appreciate that. It's always nice to hear that it paid off. Like I said, I'm really proud of all my kids. Like, you're one of my kids. Like, I'm really proud of like you being able to stand up on your own 2 feet and not taking punches to the face and just taking charge of life. Because
Yeah,
it's always really hard. So it's really nice that you can rely on yourself, other people, and just make it on your own.
for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. I really appreciate this experience. Thanks for inviting me.
And thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Novice Experience, and we'll talk to you next time.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Novice Experience. Our theme song is Concrete Jungle by Audio Binger. You can find us or reach out on social media at The Novice Exp. That's The Novice EXP. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on all your podcast listening platforms. Talk to you next time.